There we go. So that would be the biggest part of it is 8x8. Everybody you have in your system, that so 8x8 is for people coming in. Everybody you have in your system should be on the 32 touch or 33 touch or 36 touch, whatever system you're using for that. And every one of those numbers can be explained. But everybody you have in your system should be on some kind of a touch system where you're when we say touch them, that's your monthly mail out, your newsletter, for example, your open house cards, just listed cards, your anniversary cards, birthday cards. There's all types of ways, and we talked about that last week, that you can reach out to them. That's the second one. The third one are those that you have not met. And if you remember from last week, for those of you that were here, that's about a 12 to 1 ratio when we're looking at that. I'm sorry, those are individuals you have not met, right? And you want to do something else with those. Those would be the subdivisions, the areas that we're working on that we want to try to make ours. People we've not met, whether it's a subdivision, it could be a fourplex, it could be an apartment complex, it could be, those are the ones we have not met. And you have those three different categories. And if you work with that, and keep that in mind as you're building your system, it works really well. So when we talk about listings, needing a listing, I've shared when we talk about know your numbers and working on a subdivision, there's a broker in town that I used to work with, and I had gone to him and I said, "Hey, look, this subdivision hasn't had hardly any transactions in 2 years." And based on, and you can find that out by looking at MLS. You can find that out today by looking at RPR, what's going on within a subdivision. But it generally starts with MLS. As much as I love RPR, that's where I would start is MLS because I want to see what's going on with subdivisions, right? And I told him that there hasn't really been anything going on, and historically this subdivision's about ready to pop again. And by the end of the day, he had appointments stacked up in that subdivision and picked up a couple new listings off of it within the week. So that works really well. So when we cover some of this, we want to know what's going on with us, right? What are we doing? And again, you guys have some of the handouts in there, and I'll share some of those with you. I'll open those up so we can take a look at them as well as we go through this. But one of the first things that comes to mind is where are we at? What are we doing? So I'm going to share a screen with you, and we're going to go back and take a look at. Some of you did not, in fact, nobody. Karen was the only one that showed up. We had our business planning session. We'll do that again next round. But when we talk about business planning, one of the things we talk about is our goals and setting things up. And since some of you weren't there, I just want to touch base on this. I put this in the chat so you have a copy of it. Is the Agent's Business Planning Calculator. And I'm not going to run through the whole thing, but I wanted you to just see it. For those of you that have not seen it, it's an awesome tool. When I joined Remax, this was one of the first tools I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I've been looking for. Now, I run a system that I've used for years, which I have not put in the chat for you, where I do annual goals. This is mine, right? It's an Excel spreadsheet I created years ago based off a coaching mentoring course that I took in Austin back in 2001. And I've added to it as I've gone along, but it breaks everything, excuse me, breaks everything down for you. And this is what I personally use. But it doesn't break everything down into the fine detail that the one Remax has. And this is the one I did share with you. The one you're looking at right now is the one that I did share with you. And make sure I'm on the right screen. Yeah. There you go. Let's do it that way. And this one does break everything down. So if you'll work through this one, it does your life aspirations. You can plug things in. What do you want, desire, passion, etc. There's your personal budget, which is something you need to take a look at as an agent. It's not necessarily about the money, but we need to know where we need to be to live our life, uh, run our business, and do our marketing the way we'd like to do. And all that ties in with this. You have your personal budget, your financial model. And on the financial model, if you whatever number you plug in here at the top, whatever your desired profit is, you plug in your expenses on this thing, and then what's your average commission rate? I'm just plugging some rough numbers in. What's your average sales price? So based on this, I need 20 transactions. I need 20 transactions, right? And this is the part and reason I tie it in here. I'll tie it in, you'll hear me tie it in again with the buyer side probably a little bit. And then also when we do our planning portion of it, it's real important. It's a great tool to have. I love this one at the bottom. It is unacceptable for my business to profit less than. That's your goal, right? But what's really cool about this is I need 20 transactions. And now I come over here. If you're on the listing side, I need somebody to jump in here with me if you would, anybody. If I need 20 transactions, how many of those are you going to get on the listing side? How many would you like to get on the listing side? Anybody to play this just for a little bit? Johnny,
Half,
how many?
half, 10.
Have them? Okay. Let me turn my volume up on my side here. There you go. All right, so let's say we're going to get 10 of them from this side. And quite frankly, normally what happens is we'll lean one way or the other. When we come out of the gates, when we first get our license, we shoot like a shotgun, right? Trying to hit whatever. Um, but what'll happen is you'll find something that you are a lot better at. Like I was doing the same thing everybody else did, shotgunning it, whatever I can get my hands on, I'll take it. Um, but my focus became listings. And with listings, you're going to get buyers. And this morning, we're talking about the listing side of this, working with sellers, and we want to know what's going on with the sellers. We want to be able to work with those a little bit. And if on this one, knowing your strengths and weaknesses is really important because you want to go that direction, right? And I'll show you why. So, Johnny, if you're going to get 10 from 10 of the 20 you need from the listing side, you're going to get 10 of those, 10 of those from the listing side. What activity that's listed there would you use? Which activity?
Um, well, I do a lot of networking. So I would say probably of those 10, I would probably get about five from networking.
All right.
Um, and then I also do quite a bit of open houses, but open houses are pretty much, I don't want to say geared towards buyers, but I mean, 9 out of 10 people are in there, because they want to buy. Sometimes you get people trying to scope out how much they can sell their house for. But I do open houses. Um, I do a lot of advertisement. But honestly, I think that in terms of rate of return, for me, just the way that I am and my personality, I do a lot of networking, and I seem to do okay there, and it's little to no cost, and I get a pretty good return.
Absolutely. I would agree with that like 100%. So would you say you get more than 10 or more than half of projection wise, could you get more than half of your listings from networking?
Yeah, I would say so, sir.
In fact, from what I know of you, you'd probably get about 8 of them from there, is what I would expect if this
Yeah,
was your real goal. So I'm
yeah,
going to change that to 8 real quick. And I want to show the rest of you something as well. Thanks, Johnny. Appreciate it. On here, you talked about open houses and how open houses are primarily for the buyers. We all know that. However, as a listing agent, if I'm walking the neighborhood to let people know that I'm having the open house, and in fact, you could have 2 open houses, and this is something I would absolutely encourage. If I had an open house from 1 to 2, it's just for the neighbors. And that's where you'll pick up listings because you go around and invite the neighbors to attend the open house. It's just for them. 1 to 2 is just for them, right? It makes them feel good and it gives you the opportunity to have that conversation and you're inviting them to something that's just for them. And then 2 to 4 is public, right? But the 1 to 2 is just for the neighbors. And it gives you a reason to talk to them, reason to knock on their door. And then you have that opportunity to invite them into the property, take a look at what you're doing. And maybe at that point, even displaying your marketing. What are you doing to market the open house? What are you doing to market the property? It's not about you, it's about what you're doing for the property to get sold. What are you doing to help them get that property sold? And the neighbors want to know that. So 1 to 2 for just that, and then 2 to 4 for the other works really well. So you can pick up some from there, but I will also share with you, in my mind, the ones that we can control, just like Johnny was talking about, the networking is the key one. FSBOs expires, you can control those. Open houses, you can a little bit. based on the amount of effort and time and money you spend on it. Like there's agents doing open houses like crazy. I checked a couple of them out over the weekend. They were on RPR, which means they put it into MLS. Anytime you have an open house, it should go into MLS. You'll hear me say that all the time, because then MLS feeds it out, right? We want to know about that. But what I didn't find was I didn't find some of them on Facebook Marketplace. And if you're the listing agent, you have to pull out all stops. You want to hit every possible avenue there is out there because your job is to get that property sold, right? And even though there's people have told me, oh, I hate that, I wouldn't do it. Facebook Marketplace works really well. I can show you where I put a listing in and had over 20 inquiries off of it. Now it was an owner finance, so that's going to generate a little more than usual anyway. But just over 20 inquiries off of just one property is pretty good. The other one I used to use and get great results from and still works today, even though there's people that say they don't like it, is Craigslist. Because there's people that look at Craigslist, they use that. I was in, I was taught about it or learned about Craigslist from an investor. That's where he found his properties at. He goes, are you marketing these properties on Craigslist? I was like, no, why? And that was his primary source. He was from California. That was his primary source for finding properties back then was Craigslist. And I had a couple other things that happened, and then I decided from then on, every Friday I updated Craigslist. And I used that for years. They've changed it over the years, but I used to do links and everything else in there, which you can no longer do. But there's a whole lot of opportunity there for you if that's something you want to do. So those are the things that you cause that to happen, right? You cause that, and that's why I like the top part of this. The bottom, I can't control the internet. I can't control the website other than the information I put on it. Just listed, just sold. I can't make somebody that gets that card call me, but you can work that. You certainly can work that. So for me, if I was filling this out, and Johnny mentioned open house, so I'm going to put his other two in here on the open house. So just to wrap this up, the 10 listings from the listing side. And what's cool about this chart, and the reason I share it with you here once again is because the reason I put it in the chat is because now we need 10 listings. If I go over here to the listing side, you notice how the two that we put things in are unblocked, right? I can see those. Well, down at the bottom, it gives you some numbers. And these are national numbers provided by Remax. So let's take the open house, and we're just going to work on one of these. Let's take the open house. And by the way, when you look at the numbers, like on the open house right here, it shows 50, 67, 80. And what that is it's new or average. And then you have your above average and then excellent. And I'm going to tell you, part of my success in life was to um, set my goals, my objectives on average. You'll hear me talk about that from time to time. I was recruiter of the year up in North Central Texas. I had the station of the year where I had rookie of the year, recruiter of the year, station of the year. All these guys were getting promoted, all this good stuff. But it was all because we based our numbers on the low end, right? If you base the numbers on the low end, forget about all the nonsense and go after those numbers, you'll get where you need to be. And you want to do that. You want to do that. So even if I went back to the street today, which would probably be a great thing. Even if I went back to the street today, my numbers would be based on the average or new, only because I know that works, right? And when you start getting things rolling, what happens in this business, you get things rolling and then you stop prospecting. So you start going down again, you go back up. I might shift those numbers a little bit after things were going again, but I would go back and shift to the new all the time. Anytime you wanted to change offices, change business, change your end goal, you want to increase that end goal, go back to the new and just focus on those numbers and you'll be there. So I'm going to plug these numbers in 50, 75, and 95, for example. And then the last two is 5 and 95. This is the item, like I said, when I seen this, when I joined Remax and I seen this, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is exactly because in the other one I had goals, but they're both based on a monthly, and I was having manually. I needed to know to get one contract, how many Face-to-face meetings did I have to have? How many contracts did I have to write? How many face-to-face meetings? How many phone calls did I need to make? You want to know all that, and this gives you that. It's awesome. How many months out of the year are you going to work? Well, that's entirely up to you, but let's just say we work 11 months, for example. Oops. Or we could change that to 12, whatever you want to do. Somebody I was working with the other day, we did this, and they actually they're going to work 48 weeks, right? See how the numbers automatically populate for you? That's what I'm talking about. When we're talking about working with sellers, where do you need to be? What do you need to do, right? Your daily, how many days out of the week are you going to work? I would say at least take one day off. Absolutely take one day off. So based on this, for me to hit the goal Johnny mentioned, for example, eight of his listings coming from networking, he only needs to attempt to, or he only needs to talk to two people a day. That's it. That's all he needs to do to get there, right? It's amazing when you start talking about this and breaking it down what it actually is. And we get lost because we see all these, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that. And next thing you know, you really haven't done anything, right? So focus on what's going to give you the results. Here, I need to talk to two people a day about real estate. That's it. That's it. Now, if you'll take that and fine tune it just a little bit. I want two appointments a day, two appointments a day. And that's not on here. That's putting you ahead of the ball game. On here, in fact, if you take a look at it, it's less than one one a week is what this actually one appointment a week, right? Meetings, one a week is what this is saying you need to hit those goals. If you're shooting for two appointments, it's a lot better. I'm going to talk two new people a day. I want two new appointments a day, right? I'm sorry, two new appointments for the week. Two new people a day, two new appointments a week. And if you'll shoot for that, that would give you the results that Johnny was talking about here, which would be his 10. Does that make sense to everybody? It's so easy and it's absolutely awesome when you run the numbers with this thing. All right. And again, I shared that in the chat. Everybody should have that in the chat so you have a copy of it if you don't have it already. If you have not used this, please use it to see where you're at and what's going on with it. And it does the same thing on the buyer side. So we're going to jump off that. Working with sellers is an important part of what we do. And I want to just touch base on a couple other little things here with you on this one. Let's see. So as we're doing this, know that on the listing side of the house, we also have some other things that go into play, right? So we need to talk to people about selling their property. You're going to run into buyers when you do that, but on the listing side, if your focus is on the listing side, you're helping people sell their home. We also need to make sure that we have geographic competency, not just geographic, but geographic and property specific competency. So if I'm out talking to people at networking events, like for example, one of them that we used to attend that paid dividends for us for a long time was the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce was really beneficial for us. We met a lot of people. You meet developers, builders, other people, investors in there as well. And one of the things to keep in mind is the geographic and property specific competency. If you're not competent in that and your ICA, independent contractor agreement, doesn't stipulate you're okay to do that, then you might want to get some help with it, right? And all you need to do is ask. There's plenty of people. If I run across somebody today that wanted to sell a mall, for example, I, I'm not going to take that, but I can absolutely refer to somebody within the company that does, and keep that within the company. So when we look at the listing side of this, what are you actually going to do, right? So what's your plan? How are you going to work that? And again, the things that I can control are the things I want to really focus on the listing side. And all the items that we've talked about, the expired, the physical networking, the farming, geo farming is really great for the listing side. People get to know you, and it may not be them that want to sell it, but they'll refer you to somebody else that does. And you want to continually build that system. Everything you do Everything you do is to generate new listings, right? That's your focus on it. And it's extremely beneficial if you'll do that. Here's some stats on this real quick. When you look at the when you're getting started with it versus what it could be in phase three, just as an example, those numbers all add up in the long run. The more people I talk to, the more business I'm going to do. So that's the first part. Every time you leave your house, every time you leave your office, you should be talking to people about real estate. And if I'm going to talk specifics, I'm going to talk about listings. Know anybody who wants to, my thing might be, do you know anybody who has a real estate need? It doesn't matter what it is. I'll work with it. If I can't do it, I can refer to somebody that can, right? Do you know anybody that might have a real estate need? And so make sure that you have one of those, what do they call them? Elevator speeches, right? Elevator pitch. If somebody says, what do you have an answer? Roberto, sir, what if somebody asks you, what do you do for a living? What do you say?
I would say yes, my I love what I do for a living. I help people realize their real estate needs and goals by selling their house or helping them buy their house.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Anybody else? Michelle, Barry, or Michelle Sanchez, either one of you? Nope. Okay. All right. So when we talk about the elevator speech, please, we want to keep it simple. We want to keep it really simple, but yet we want to give them something powerful, right? Remember that we used to call them general benefit statement. What's the benefit of you working with somebody, right? How are you there to help them? So one of the things, for example, if you ask me today, Mac, what do you do for a living? Um, I help people with buy and sell real estate. I help people with real estate. I help people with their real estate needs, whatever you want to throw out there, right? And always end it with a question. Do you know anybody that I should be working with? Something like that. Do you know anybody that has a need, right? Always end it with a question. Answer a question with a question, right? What do you do for a living? I help people with real estate. Do you know anybody I can help? And it doesn't matter what it is. We have solutions for all this. It may not be me, but within our network, within Remax Elite, we have people that have those solutions, right? And that's what we want to focus on. When we look at the attitudes of this, as a listing agent, you're going to get beat up. You're going to get beat up, right? And it's just part of it. It's not just real estate, that sells. It happens all the time. Um, it happens all the time. It doesn't matter what. If you're in sales, it happens in other businesses as well, I imagine, but in sales, it definitely happens where one person will claim something that may not even be true, but they'll get the consumer because you didn't make those false claims or you didn't explain it that way, right? And it's part of it. I will tell you that in this business, if you lose a listing, if you go on an appointment, it's you and somebody else, and you lose to somebody else, there's a very good possibility that listing is going to expire and they'll come back to you. So never ever get all fired up about it in a negative way. Stay fired up in an enthusiastic way, right? You will get that listing. I absolutely have seen that happen. Where they choose, we decided to list with somebody else because they said we get more money than what you did. Really? Okay. Well, I wish you the best luck. If it doesn't work out, I'll always be here. I'm not going anywhere. And if you have any questions about anything, you can always reach out to me. And by the way, when I say that one, know that if they have an agent and they call you, you should not be answering any questions, right? Because we're not going to interfere with fiduciary duty, but they will. They'll have something will go wrong and they're going to call you and ask you for advice. We don't give advice to anybody that's not a client. Wish I could help you, but I can't. You made that choice. Not, so just be nice about it though. But that will happen. I absolutely guarantee that can happen in this business, and we'll have it. When we talk about checking the attitude, number 7 is what I was getting at here. You're not going to convert 100% of the leads that you don't generate. So you need to generate leads. That should be your focus, right? All the time. And it's extremely beneficial once you get into that aspect of it. And then if you take a look at 12, we'll talk about CMAs next week in our company training. And pricing is really, really important. And if you don't understand how to price, then take one of the classes on it, try to learn some more on it. We do CMAs within our core courses. We'll talk about CMAs within our core course. The MLS sometimes teaches how to do a CMA. I have on YouTube or on our Remax Elite Realtor. There's a video on there on doing a CMA. Eric did it back when he was with the company. We also have PSA within Texas Realtors, Pricing Strategy Advisor, depending on who the instructor is there, depends on how that one goes. They teach you about pricing. Or you can take additional courses that may be 1 or 2 hour courses. Robbie English offers some really good courses on understanding a CMA. And in fact, he probably gets a little too deep for most real estate agents on those, but they are good. They're really good. The Turbocharger CMA was a class I took with him just for the heck of it to see what he had. And then pricing homes is not an exact science. If every one of you was given the same exact information, well, so here's the subject property, here's 3 comps. Let me just throw that out real quick. By the way, the comps we use on a CMA should be 3 sold comps. And we'll talk about that during the CMA part, but 3 sold comps, that's our focus, right? So if I gave every one of you a subject property and 3 comps, you're not going to come out with the same price. You might be close, but it's not going to be the same, right? So there's going to be some differences. So the other part of that is we need to make sure the seller understands that as well. That who they talk to will depend on how that goes, right? So if you prep them on that, you want to let them know that there's going to be some differences, right? If you're one of the ones to talk to them. Vital responsibilities, talk about, and this is all in the handout that I put in the chat. This is all in there for you. The vital listing responsibilities, and in Momentum, they have 7 vital listing, they have 7 buyer, they have 47 vital activities. Everything is on the vital side of this. But anyway, we'll take a look at these here. Your lead generation and lead conversion, those are the 2 main ones. How many people do I need to talk to get them to say yes, they'll meet with me, right? And fine-tuning that number, how many people do I need to talk to at least meet with me? Fine-tuning that technique, the way you come across, what you're offering them to get them to this stage is really important. You're going to run across all types of numbers at the beginning. You might talk to 10 people that say, yeah, I'm thinking about selling, but not right now. Or I'm thinking about selling maybe a year from now. That's okay. That's all right, right? But you're talking to people about selling the property. So how many of those do you need to talk to get to that one person that you actually sit down and talk to? And knowing those numbers is really important in this business. If you were to say, Mac, I'm talking to hundreds of people, but I'm not getting anybody, I'm going to make an assumption, but I'm going to ask questions about it, right? So we can talk about details. If you're talking to hundreds of people at HEB, that may not necessarily be the best place talking about selling their property. Can you meet people at HEB? Absolutely, done that. It works. Our HEB doesn't anymore, but our HEB used to have free coffee in the mornings. So, right, instead of going to the restaurant like some of the other business people would do, HEB on Sunday mornings was a great place to go. Take a look at this number 4 here, marketing and exposure. Marketing and exposure. So there's only 2 real big parts of this when we talk about listings. It's the pricing, which the seller sets, not us. We can give them recommendations, and you always want to give you a price range, and you'll hear that over and over. The price and the exposure are the key things. The verbiage that may go with that, and you'll hear this from time to time, the verbiage that goes with that to the seller is, you decide on the price, I handle the exposure. We're in this together, right? And that part, you're going to guide them on the price, you're going to give them advice, you're going to show them what a market analysis looks like and explain how that works. But that marketing and exposure is all on you. All on you. And that's why I say you have to pull out all the stops. Closing preparation, what needs to happen there. And by the way, when you're in a listing presentation, when you're having that conversation with somebody about selling their home, there's 3 basic questions, and please write these down if you haven't heard them. most of you've heard these over and over, but there's three basic questions you'll want to ask everybody who says they're thinking about selling their home. Everybody. Three basic questions. Please write these down. Why are you selling? How soon do you need it sold by? And oh, by the way, based on what you know, what do you think your property's worth in today's market? Based on what you know, what do you think your property's worth in today's market? So why are you selling? How soon do you need it sold by? And oh, by the way, what do you think your property's worth in today's market? Are three questions to help get you into the foundation of where they're at. Those questions, each one of those questions go in different directions. You ask all three of them, you make a note of the answer, and then you come back and address those individual answers. And by the way, anytime you're doing that, I said you make a note of it. Before you write anything down with a consumer, you have to ask permission. I'm going to ask you a couple questions, but I'd like to take some notes as you're answering those. Is that okay with you? Right? And even the other day, I was talking to a gentleman, a sales rep with Zig Ziglar Corporation, and when we started the conversation, he goes, Max, some of the things you say are going to be really important to me, and if it's okay with you, I'm going to jot down some notes as we go along that I may reference later on. I'm going to jot down some notes as we go along that I may reference later on. Right. So if Zig Ziglar Corporation is using it, you and I should be probably using that. Right. So those three questions, everybody should have those. And when we take a look at the 47 vital listing activities, finding sellers, where are we going to find them at? And again, there's 1,000 ways to do this business. You have to decide what works for you. That's what you have to do. What's going to work for you? I love for sale by owners and I love expireds. I absolutely love them. Those are people that want to sell their house. All they need is me as their agent, right? We'll make that happen. But FSBOs and expireds, a lot of agents have a negative mindset with that, and it has nothing to do with the for sale by owners or the expireds. It does have a lot to do with you. It absolutely has something to do with you. And it does take some time to get over that. And there's ways to do that. And if that's something you're wanting to work on, you can do that. On the expires, for example, I had started with phone calls. Up in Austin, for example, I was doing phone calls using RedX. I came back to the Valley. I was trying to do that, and I went to person instead because of the language barrier or perception of that after a few phone calls. And then I went, as production picked up, I went to doing mail outs. And unless it was an expired I really wanted, and then I could do the door knocking. But door knocking expireds and door knocking for sale by owners works really well as long as you're prepared for it. Then you take a look at some of the other ones on here. You have your traditional and your social networks. I'm amazed at how many times people put on social media, hey, I need an agent in Corpus Christi, or I need an agent in Houston. And you have all these people that throw out names, but if you go in and look at them, they're in different companies. They're not, there's really no connection that I can see other than they may know each other. That's it. So if you're going to do that, use the Remax system, right? To send out referrals and etc. But on the social networks, for example, you can actually join groups that do that. There's a group in LinkedIn, Canadian Referrals, for example. I joined that years ago. There's things in there that you can do with that. So anyway, when we're talking about lead generation, you see some of the things. Geofarming, everybody should be into geofarming. You should have a subdivision that you're trying to make yours. And there's a calendar. It's in our Facebook groups. There's a geo calendar in there that tells you different, gives you some ideas of what you can do on a month-to-month basis for geofarming. That's something that we've done and it works for you because you're trying to just get exposure, right? But that's going to be slow, so it has to be consistent, and it can get to be a little expensive if you're not careful with it. So you want to watch how you're doing that. If you need help with it, yell at me. We'll take a look at the vital activities for listings, or somebody else that yell at me, or somebody else that has the experience with it, that does the marketing. I have some examples of I have some examples that I share in some of the other classes from Michelle Sanchez, for example, with a market viewer on some cookies she made. It's probably been about 3 years ago. She made some cookies and she had the market viewer printout that you see, that blue paper that the MLS puts out, the board puts out. She had that, one of these customized shops, put on each one of the cookies for the Corpus Christi area. So little things like you want to do something different. You always want to work on that side of it. Anyway, I'm sorry. 47 vital listing activities. We take a look at the lead conversion side of this. Pre-listing questions. Those 3 questions I was giving you that I gave you for the sellers are really important. You want to hit those, make sure that you get in there with those. When you take a look at this, prepare a listing agreement. Never ever, please don't show up at somebody's house just to talk to them about listing their home. If somebody calls me today and says, "Can you come over and talk to me about putting my home on the market?" I'm going to show up with my sign, my phone, so I can take pictures. Not a great way to take pictures, but I'm going to get some pictures. I'm going to have the listing agreement filled out. I'm going to have seller's disclosure filled out. I'm going to have everything in a file. And I want to talk to them about what I do and what Remax Elite does and what we're going to do to get their home sold, right? That's going to be the focus. It could have been just a phone call. Mac, we're thinking about selling in a year. Can you come over and talk to us? Maybe it's a military thing, but I'm going to show up ready to go to war. That's it. And I'm not leaving until you say yes. They don't list right now, they're going to sell in a year. I'm okay with that. But I want to be ready just in case while I'm there, they decide, you know what, let's go ahead and put it on the market now. Because they may not understand what the market is doing. And there's never a better time to put your home on the market than right now. Right? Because occasionally you'll run into those individuals that say, well, I want to find a new place before I put mine on the market. That's not a good strategy. Because you might find a place you fall in love with, but we haven't sold this one. And if you have to sell that one before you buy this one, we have a problem, right? So we want to be proactive. We can always do a temporary lease. We can. There's all kinds of things we can do. Think outside the box, but have that conversation with them. But be ready to go if they say yes. One of the other things I like to throw out that just came to mind as well with this is if you're working with relocation. You're working with relocation, a lot of times they'll tell you you have to do a two-step interview. And what they mean by that is you go out and look at the property, talk to the homeowner, you go back, you run your numbers, and then you go back and meet them. And I was taught that. I was told by a relocation company to do that. And when I called them to confirm, because I set the appointments up front, when I called them to confirm I'm coming out today at this time, they go, "Oh, you don't need to. We went ahead and listed with such and such." Wow. Did you list the day that he was there? Yeah, we did. But the relocation company had said you had to do a two-step. I didn't tell them that, but the relocation company said you had to do a two-step. That's what they required. He didn't do that. He showed up and listed the property all at one time. And that's when I quit doing two-step. Before that, I was doing that a lot because it seemed like a good system. It's not. You show up, you're ready to go, right? You want to do that. Any questions there? On here, it says measure the rooms, make sure that you have that. I don't do that, and I would not encourage that. If your MLS requires it, that's a different story. But we had that conversation when we rebuilt our MLS, and we decided not to do it because of liability issues. So I don't measure anything. If you want a professional measurement, they can call an appraiser. And an appraiser will come out and measure the property to give you an official measurement of the property. They're going to charge you for it. Here, one of the appraisers charges $150 to go out and do an official measurement of the property that we can now go by, right? And that we can use as a reference. But I would highly recommend we don't measure anything ourselves. Every time we do something like that, it's liability for you and for the company. On here, we also look at this, mail a thank you letter. So even if I go out to get a listing and the seller says, "You know what, Mac, I'm sorry, we're going to go with somebody else," I'm going to send them a thank you letter. Absolutely send a thank you letter. And I've shared two things with you, and I'm going to jump off these vital activities and go to something else real quick. But everybody you talk to should be getting thank you letters. 5 thank you letters per day or thank you cards per day is a great way to build relationships in the community. 5 thank you cards. Comes out of Tom Hopkins' book, How to Master the Art of Selling, and in Carla Cross's book as well. 5 thank you cards per day is a good way to go about things. And the other part of that is when we're looking at listings, when you're looking for listings, there's more that you can do with this. When we talk about the thank you letter, when you visit somebody else's property, if you're doing a preview of somebody else's property, you leave your business card upside down with thank you for allowing me to preview the property. And by the way, you should be previewing 5 other brokers' listings per day. 5 other brokers' listings per day. And those listings need to be owner occupied or tenant occupied. Do not preview vacant properties for this purpose. 5 other brokers' listings per day to preview. And you leave your business card upside down saying, thanks for allowing me to come by and take a look at the property. I really do appreciate it. That's it. And you'll generate listings off of that. That is a guarantee. The numbers might be a little wider, but you'll get things out of it. You may end up with a seller calling you again because you previewed the property, asking your opinion about different things. No advice, no opinions. They're not our client. We want to stay away from that. Listing basics. These are some things that you should be able to share with the seller. And in fact, I think it's tomorrow. We get into the listing presentation, listing conversation, and as we do that, there's a list of questions you can ask a seller. So on that last part that I was talking about, if the seller chooses to go with somebody else, that's okay. It's absolutely okay. But know that you're still going to be there. You're available if something falls apart. If you use these key indicators there's a sheet that I'll share with you tomorrow, I believe it is, that has a list of these questions. You cover those questions. If I know I'm competing with somebody else, I'm going to answer these questions. I'm going to hand it to them and say, I'd love for you to ask these questions of the other agent because I can. I'm not going to share. I'd love for you to ask these questions of the other agent. I've answered them for you. You have any questions about these questions? No? Great. I've answered all these questions. Please ask the other agents, see what their responses are. And I'm sharing that with you because, in all honesty, they're probably not going to be able to answer them. Your average agent cannot tell you what their average days on the market is. They can't tell you what their list price to sales price ratio is. They don't have any idea. You can because you prepared for that, right? And you want to do that. Again, there's a sheet that I use for that. Thanks for throwing that in the chat, Michelle. Appreciate it. That's exactly it. All right. Any questions about any of those? And again, all of this is in that handout. It has conversations in here, how to start the dialogue, different things you can use to go with that as well. And we certainly want to work with that. All right, let me grab this for you. Chat, yes. So this is one of the things I threw in the chat, and these are my notes, but I pull it from Carla Cross's book, Up and Running. It's business planning, up and running, making money your first month in real estate. This is what I started out with. So you want to talk to 10 people face to face about real estate, 5 on the phone about real estate, hand out 15 business cards per day, 15 business cards per day, and then 5 other brokers listings. And this system works. That's 175 possible contacts a week. In her book, Making Money Your First Month in Real Estate, Your Business Planning, she has it set up so you're talking to 100 to 125 people per week. If you're doing that consistently, you'll get where you need to be. and I shared the other day in the Harlingen office. I ran by this. When I first started, I bought her book in '97. I went through it. I started doing exactly everything from the goal setting, which back then the goal setting was different pieces of paper, and you write down um, here sphere of influence. I expect to have this many people in there. I expect to get this many contracts, and I expect it to cost this. And then you plan that out. How am I going to contact them? And you plug it into each month. That was all on paper, on a kitchen table. To what we have today with some of the tools that we have. I did that back in '97. When I moved to Austin, I picked this back up and started going with it again. That 5 other brokers listings, I got so busy in Austin that I got to a point where I can't do that today. I've got too many. I've got the showing. I've got this. I've got that. I can't do it. So you know what? This was me talking to myself. You know what I'll do is I'm going to take those 5 other brokers listings and I'm just going to put them all on Friday. Friday, I'm just going to block out Friday. I'm going to see 25 other brokers listings. Please don't do that. I was fried on Friday. I have no idea what those properties even looked like. I hit all 25. I left my business card. Thanks for allowing me to preview the property. But yeah, it didn't work the way it should have, in my opinion. So please don't do that. Time block this, make this work for you. Part of the purpose behind leaving a business card upside down and saying thank you for allowing me to preview it right here in Harlingen in a previous company, one of the agents that I shared this with had done this, and she got a phone call. She got a phone call from the sellers that said, "Thank you. We want you to list our property for sale. It's going to expire. Our listing is going to expire here shortly. We'd like for you to list our property for sale." You're the only agent that ever said thank you to us for preparing our home to be looked at. Even our own listing agent never said thank you. She got that listing, she listed it, she sold it, all off of a little business card turned upside down. Thank you for allowing me to preview your home. And so that works. And I mean, I've used it as well, but so I know that it works. And you make prospecting your number one objective. We want to work on that. Any questions on that? So some of you will, and these I have not shared, but some of you will want things like a listing file checklist. And if there's things like this, in fact, let me see if I can just grab this. I'll throw this one in the chat. You can take some of these and clean them up and make them yours. Make them yours so that you have that and you can work from it. The listing file checklist, if you take a look at it, it's a Remax Elite form. It has the basics on it. So take something like this and make it yours. You can do it in Excel. You can do it in today. You can do it in Canva pretty easily. Make it yours. And the reason why I don't have one of these to say this the companies use it is because each one of us do things differently. Everybody's business is a little different. And what you do on a single family home is not the same as what you do on a condo or multifamily. They're all different, right? So to have one standard one doesn't work. That's why I share a variety of things. And then we also have this one. It's a contract to close seller's checklist. And you can get things like this from Breakthrough Broker as well. BreakthroughBroker.com as well. And then I have one other item I wanted to share with you this morning. If I can find it. It's right here. Sorry, I thought I had it open already. Now I put this one in the chat this morning as well. And when we're looking at this, I have no connection to this at all other than reading it and getting something out of it. And that's Profit First. Profit First is a book. They did the mastermind group and mission based on this book as well. I picked this up several years ago in a GRI class in San Antonio. And what I love about it, and this is why I share it with you guys, is you have to look at you, right? And if I'm on the listing side, and these are my goals, that's why we have at the beginning of that, here's what it's going to cost me, here's what I need to live on, here's what I need to run my business on, here's what I need for marketing. You have all those numbers put together. Here's how much money I need to make to be able to do all that this year. Then what do you do with the money? And that's where this one comes into play. And like I said, it's in the chat for you as well. This is the one sheet that goes with it. Setting up the different accounts and having that together. Normally, when I cover the business course, business part of this, I cover this, but again, we only had one person show up for that. Thanks, Karen, for being there. But for like the 14th time, yeah. So the this actually covers a lot of different things that you can do for your business. And I share because I think it's real important. We have a lot of agents that don't understand business. I was one of those, and I will share with you all the time. When I started in the business, I had taken a financial course in Virginia. That's what was my last duty station. I was going to take a college course over there. But what I didn't understand, because I was a Marine and not business oriented. I took a personal finance class. And in that class, they said, take all your money that you have coming in, whatever the source is, and put it in one account. And that's exactly what I did when I started in this business. And that is the worst thing you can do, right? You have a business, you need to make sure it's set up accordingly. And if you have any questions about that, you can always reach out. We have a lot of people in the business that have things set up the way they should have in our company, but there's people in this business that don't have. And if you have, if you're looking on the listing side of this and you're looking to benefit from the listings, the benefit is huge. Benefit is huge. The other day at the award ceremony, I think it was the mission one. At the award ceremony, there was an award given out for volume, right? Number one commercial volume. And I shared across the table, I shared the fact that, with commercial, that volume, that's the dollar base, could be one transaction. And he's since passed, but Jerry Sondock was an agent here in Harlingen when I came back in 2002. He shared with me, he says, whatever you do, don't be like me. Like, what is that? Well, I had one transaction my first year. It was a golf course, made a ton of money off of it, but only one. And I could never do that. And that's why setting goals, like what we did with Johnny at the beginning, where do I want to start at? What do I think I'm going to need? Right? And where am I going to get them from? And using that tool to break them down will help you in working with your listings. When you work for the seller, your job is to get the property sold. It's not just to list the property. Your job is to get the property sold, period. Doesn't matter, get it sold, whatever it takes. And there's so many different ways it can be done. And that's what we're here to do, is to help you with that. Anybody have any questions about anything we covered?